Oh no!
Welcome back to the GeoWizard channel, everyone, the home of such mischievous adventures as the no roads and straight line missions. Today though, we're offering something a bit different, something a bit more normal in some ways, but in others, completely mental. A challenge devoid of the trepidation and anxiety of the straight line mission, but instead one of patience, endurance, technical ability and grit.
I am struggling right now.
A challenge which I genuinely had no idea if I'd succeed at or not, and one that even my loyalist of fans believed that I was almost certain to fail. And who can blame them?
It can't be done, guys.
Because back in July, I became the first person to attempt to dribble a football the entire 73 miles across Britain in under 24 hours. As usual, I'm now going to explain why the hell I chose to do this. First off, I love playing football. Over the years, I must have clocked up hundreds, if not thousands of hours belting, volleying, curling and chipping footballs into nets. And quite often I could be seen dribbling a football along the pavement to and from my local village green for a 7-hour kickabout. The result of all these years of practice was a fairly average match player with the occasional eye for goal, but an ability to control the ball pretty well. What this means is a good touch and a good pass, and it's these attributes that would come in very handy for this challenge. Beyond my love of football lies my well-documented lust for adventure. As you know, I'm always on the lookout for new ideas and ways of experiencing adventure, and it was only a matter of time before my love for messing around with bulls collided head-on with my ache to explore. A crossing of Britain with a ball at my feet seemed like the natural choice. It's got a good ring to it, it's never been done before, and it's just the right distance to make me question whether it's doable. The perfect blend. Even better though, right at England's narrowest point, there happens to be an established hiking trail called the Hadrian's Wall Trail, whose well-trodden, vehicle-free footpaths could in theory take me all the way from the Eden estuary in the west right over to the tidal city of Newcastle in the east, following Roman Emperor Hadrian's impressive wall. Thanks, Emperor Hadrian, for making this possible, and for keeping the Scots out as well. So, keen to prove to myself and the comments section that I could indeed complete this challenge, but also incredibly excited by the idea of raising thousands of pounds for charity, I began my training. For a couple of weeks I just ran loads, mainly off-road half marathons. Then I realised that it was probably more important to be able to walk 70 miles, so I squeezed in a few long-distance hikes through hilly terrain as well. All this was pretty doable though. The real question was, how much additional time and effort would dribbling the football add on? Well, if my debut outing along 8 miles of narrow canal towpath was anything to go by, a lot. The slopey path completely robbed me of any sort of rhythm, which is literally the key to completing ultramarathons. A second outing consisted of me hoofing the ball as far as I could and spending more time in the bushes than on the road, leaving us both deflated. In the end, I figured that my best chance was firm, medium-sized side foot passes, but at the end of the day, I was going to be at the mercy of the paths and whatever shape they chose to be on the day. By early July, after completing a 40-mile hike in the Peak District, I was starting to believe that success was possible. The walk uphill, run downhill strategy seemed to be working well, and I was confident that my newly assembled dream team of a support crew would compensate for the additional time that the ball would add on. Having cooked up a solid strategy, all that was left to do was sit back and pray that the small window of time we had in July to work with wasn't insanely hot.
Where have you been? Have you had your nails done, mate?
I just think he'd raise morale, big time.
I reckon bring it. You going to come to Carlisle with us, buddy?
People would think that we'd hired him and planned that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, get him on the cap.
Come on.
The cap on.
Come on.
Yeah. Well, you got the wrong end in front of your face there.
Please don't shit. I feel the odds of a shit are like increasing by the second.
He has had a full poach at a cafe, mate, so...
He's got to come, hasn't he?
Yeah, bring it.
We genuinely, we haven't hired this thing. Right, let's go then.
Begrudgingly, we had to leave our fine feathered friend behind, none the wiser as to whether it was someone's beloved pet or not.
See you in a bit, bid.
Bye-bye.
In other news though, having been 30 degrees in Newcastle just the day before, the weather on the 12th was absolutely ideal. 19 degrees, cloudy and no rain. And the crew, who will be properly introduced very shortly, were brimming with positivity. For some reason, this quickly manifested itself into an in-depth conversation about shitting outdoors.
Because you get the deep squat in and like your intestines align, it's just such a beautiful thing, isn't it?
I love it, mate. The feel of the wind on your cheeks.
But when I go for a stint of nature poos and then I have to go and put in a real toilet again, it actually really disappoints me.
It's, yeah.
The thing is, I raise you a nature poo. I raise you a nature poo to a nature ghost poo.
Bread. Oh yeah, a ghosty. Oh wow.
Now we're talking.
Stuff a dream. That's great.
Soon though, we couldn't help but face facts.
I'm quite excited actually. I don't know whether I should be, but it's just going to be horrible.
Yeah, it's just going to be rank, mate.
It's going to be rank, as Russ put it. The first few miles I think will be kind of nice.
Getting into the groove, and then that excitement will wear off.
Yeah.
And what will make way is just a lot of pain.
A lot of pain. How you feeling, Russ?
I mean, mate, it is what it is, do you know what I mean? It's not my first rodeo. I'm ready for a party.
What are you going to be saying at 3 in the morning?
I won't be saying much, I'll be singing a lot.
Oh,
I'll be singing, yeah, that's kind of my... You'll have to get used to that, mate. A bit of Coldplay Yellow, a bit of Mario, Let Me Love You. It's impossible to stay on the high vibes for the whole time.
Yeah.
So you have to like schedule in your low times. And that's my favourite part, is like, let's get the sad music out for a bit. Like, maybe like have a little cry and like let's just be really sad, and then bang, fucking we'll get a big tune on the speaker and then the vibe's back up here.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I like to roll.
Things are going to get weird.
Yeah, things are going to get weird.
My hip, like, annoyingly, is not feeling too great the last couple of days. I've done a lot of training for this. I've done some 40 milers on big hills in the Peak District, and I'm confident. I am confident, but you never know what might go wrong. I didn't have the ball with me that day for a start, so that is a pretty big factor. Just a small factor, yeah.
What's the furthest you've went with the ball?
10 miles.
10 miles.
Yeah.
How far are we doing today?
70.
Right. So you've been further.
You know.
But as the time rolled by, the optimism began to wane.
This is a worryingly long journey.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
We've been here for over an hour. We're bored, and this is just the car leg to the start point. Not looking forward to doing the return leg, basically.
But what exactly did this dreaded return leg entail, and what was our supposed solid strategy for tackling it? Well, once we'd set off from our start point at the unorthodox time of 2 PM, the plan was to walk the first predominantly uphill marathon by nightfall before joining the old military road for the night shift. By doing this, we could completely avoid this and instead plough on through the night along this straight, hopefully vehicle-free road and into the early hours of the morning. In theory, by the time the sun and the cars were back out to play, we'd only have about 25 miles of mostly downhill trail between us and the Tyne estuary. And talking of estuaries...
Right, Verity. Basically, Verity, if you score this penalty, it's going to be a success.
No one will die.
The whole mission is on you.
Which one of us is dying then?
People whizzing
Mini
down
cheddar?
here, right? Yes, please.
Shit, sorry. We're on the start line pretty much. The sea is over there, as you can see. We're going to dunk the ball in there in a minute. This is our amazing support crew that was
bodged together fairly last minute, but I think he's going to get me over the finish line. First of all, we've got Verity. You know Verity. That's Verity, who patches me up when things go wrong. Although we have actually got a proper medically qualified guy in Jack. Jack is basically van driver and medic. 2 birds in 1 stone. We've got Ben over here.
Hello.
Geordie fellow.
No.
Oh,
Magnum.
Oh, sorry mate, I keep doing that. He's from Sunderland. He's going to beat me up in a minute. We've got the cameraman Stan. Camera saved his life. No, just kidding.
Good start.
He's going to film it, he's going to edit it, it's going to be an amazing edit, and last but not least,
Chief curator of vibes.
Russ Cook, the hardest geezer,
Dancing to nothing.
singing, dancing the whole way there.
Light work, baby.
I'm just really raring to go now.
Yeah. Yeah,
How are
mate.
you feeling, Russ?
I'm feeling like there's no doubt in my mind that this will get done. It's just how much pain do we have to go through to get it done? That is the real question
That is the question, isn't it?
here.
It's going to be horrible, but that's why we're here. We're doing something that's never been done. There's a reason it's never been done, because it's fucking mental. And I can't wait to get going.
Nothing in life worth doing was easy. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Should we
Let's
dunk
do
the
it.
ball?
Do it.
It's a bit tricky to dunk this in and kick it back up, but should we give it a go?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Tom, what is that, mate?
What is this? Yeah. What? Football? We didn't think I was going to use a soccer ball. Ah, just kidding. You're fucking joking, aren't you? Right, that's in now. So I have to kick it out of it.
Yeah.
This is like a circuit.
Yeah. Nice.
Right, I've got an idea.
Oh, yes! Very well executed that.
Rolling. Fucking hell. Right, it's begun.
Right, let's go. Flat, eh?
Hey, how about this? Do you reckon it makes a car? Sometimes makes a car. Is that a mix?
That was a mix.
Yes!
Slow mo that, I'm sure it makes.
Good start, I think. Solid start.
So, having already achieved the impossible, it was back onto the easiest stretch of road of the trip for the first proper kick of the day.
Oh, yeah. Ball coming. Oh, it's off.
Along with cameraman Stan, I was joined on this deceivingly concave road by Ben and Russ, who were both keen to remain by my side for as much of the trip as possible, avoiding the ball at all costs and providing me with words of wisdom as they went.
Attitude to have is like, if you can run, run.
Exactly.
If you can't, don't.
Exactly, and that's what's going to give us time, isn't it?
Yeah, you want to build some time in the first half that you can keep for the second.
Yeah, mate, the last thing you want to be doing is stressing that we're going to make it
Exactly.
when you're like already fucked, yeah.
That's when you roll your ankle, isn't it?
And a few hundred yards later, I was demonstrating the validity of their point yet again.
See, doing that on kilometre 1, that's okay. Doing that on kilometre 100, he's getting meg.
Do you reckon people think it's cruel?
It's cruel to make anyone.
Give us a little flip flap.
He's moving out of the way. He knows his boss.
He knows, I'm going to humiliate him. See you in Newcastle?
All the way.
Good try.
Oh, that is cool. I wish you best of luck.
Cheers, boys.
How you, mate? You right?
Well, walking's crazy enough.
We would remain on these relatively flat, joggable roads until our next rendezvous with Jack and Verity.
When's the first stop? In a mile. What's front of a mile? Like this.
Along our 70-mile route, I'd marked out 26 van stop points. Places where Jack and his specially adapted support van had plenty of space to park up, await our arrival, and supply us with anything that our bodies could possibly crave.
Hello. People are just thinking, what?
Yeah, man.
They're not doing what I think they're doing.
We could run down this a bit.
Yeah, cool. There we go.
Here we go. Just some water and then we'll just crack on. How are you feeling, Tom?
Keen to power on, we made stop one a brief one. But the moment we tried to leave, a concerning issue arose.
Nobody will be something like that. Saying it, lads.
Nah.
That's a bit worrying. To be fair, we can always follow the sign, Hadrian's Wall path.
Yeah.
As a backup.
We can't go too far wrong.
Yeah. We're going that way.
We're going east, man.
We're going east.
Right, off the road.
Here we go. Very good, exciting. So one little snag. I mean, it's going well in every other way, except our means of navigation is wrong. The route is, well, it just hasn't been accurate, has it? It's. Oh, we're on it right now.
We're on it, yeah.
But earlier we were like 2 fields over, so
At this early stage, it's a worrying sign.
it is a worrying
Yeah.
sign. If you're wondering where the ball is, I've hoofed it up there. You're not cheating.
And speaking of hooves, there were a fair few waiting for me in the next field, presumably out to avenge the humiliating megsing of their nearby cousin.
He looks like he might be having you a bit, eh?
Hey.
Cause a stampede, mate.
They're proper eyeing you up, aren't they?
God, this one looks like he wants it. Look at the cock on this guy.
Fucking hell. Gonna have to censor that.
Tom, what are you saying? If a cow came for you, like, how are you handling that?
I'll just go, whoa.
One of them stomps on your head, you
Yeah,
are.
you're in a bad way, eh?
But with all that male testosterone about, it wasn't just the cattle whose hooves I'd have to be wary of.
Are you itching to kick the ball?
Yeah, mate, it's unbelievable how much I want to kick it.
Sorry,
Feels
guys.
like you're at school and like it's giving me like vibes of back in the day. It's like year 7s won't let me play with their ball. And I'm just trying to, I just like, look, I just want to kick that, eh?
In all seriousness though, we were firmly on track and making pretty good ground at this point, until a mile or so later we were hit with another disturbing reality check.
I think we're going. Nah, surely not. Football closed. Shit.
Landslide.
It expires in a month.
In a month.
But it's been in place for 10 years.
What?
You're joking.
It says
Are
here.
you sure this is
What?
Should we go
Yeah,
for
it
it?
is, man.
Notice
Lesson 1 of the
it
trip.
just says there's a chance.
Sometimes the gate ain't open and you have to kick it down. So let's just fucking kick it down.
You
eh?
know
fucking do it.
you know I'm on board with that.
the thing is just massively overgrown.
Oh shit.
Hey, maybe we won't kick it
No,
down.
th- basically
Fuck
runs
that, we can't do
parallel.
that.
It's never going to be smooth sailing in the whole way, was it?
Luckily, our alternative was 300 yards back the way we came, followed by a country lane that ran pretty much parallel to the trail. But it was all extra distance, effort and time that could easily add up over the course of the day. And when we did rejoin the path, it started to crank up its technical difficulty.
Bit technical this boy.
A little bit.
We don't have to run, but it's fun. It's not exhausting me mentally at all. Oh shit. I keep jinxing myself, don't I? Fuck off thistles. Whatever.
Although it was slower, I was quite enjoying the challenge, and predictably I soon got a bit carried away.
Oh, I hope so.
No, it's not.
It's not, is it?
Where am I aiming?
Straight over here.
I wish I could get on the end of it.
Beautiful, mate.
But just around the corner, things were about to go up a notch.
No.
Come on, get it in between your legs and just
Yes.
fucking jump up the steps.
Okay.
Oh, mate.
Oh mate, there's about 50 steps.
Fucking hell. Thing is, if you fuck it up once, the ball will roll all the way
Yeah,
down.
we can't help you, mate.
I reckon we're doing a good average pace here.
Yeah.
This is for you, people of Britain.
You must have been half tempted to go for the punt.
Yeah, I was.
But then, like, you're back in your act.
I was, because I'm an idiot.
Nice work,
Fucking
brother.
beautiful.
My reward at the top, aside from some barbed wire and some cow shit,
Oh, there's shit on the footy as well.
was a much kinder run of fields that led us nicely to Van Stop 2.
I'd go with a little gel right now. Bit good, eh?
Little gel, yeah, good idea.
Ice gel.
And a baby bit.
Yeah.
These are the caffeine ones. Oh no, that's a pepperoni.
I might have a pepperoni, fuck it.
Are you staying at the tin in the van?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Not for them yet, mate.
And with that harrowing image etched into my mind, we set off again into more lovely sheep-strewn fields. In places like this, kicking the ball was a delight, but all that was about to change again. Oh no!
No, no.
Oh god! No, it's alright, it's alright! Oh!
Jeez.
Yeah!
Didn't even touch it.
Easy. Every part of your body wanted to stop it, didn't it?
Yeah.
The stairs were back in force, but there was an even bigger threat emerging on the left-hand side. This is a bit dodgy. Slow section, this.
This is the...
Fuck, this is mental, mate. That goes down there, it's got to be game over,
Oh,
hasn't it?
mate, that is as close to game over as you're going to get.
This is a nice little leap, isn't it?
I'm going to be really careful, don't worry. Oh, mate, this is...
Shit me.
One rogue bobble or misjudged nudge, and the ball was a goner. We did have spare balls in the van, which I accepted that we might have to use as backups to a popped or lost ball, but even they were 45 minutes away. Even at this early stage, I'd built a sort of bond with this ball, and I was determined to mother it for as long as I possibly could. The ball itself, though, seemed to have other ideas. Stop.
Look at that.
You can't fuck about here at all.
No, mate.
Literally one careless touch and it's off.
Oh no!
What am I doing? What
Mate.
am I doing, man?
It's fine. It's retrievable.
That's fine.
You
Yeah.
Maybe kick it up this way.
I've got to be more careful.
You can stand on there, don't worry, get out your way.
Mate, I've got to be more careful. This is a bit tiring, man, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fucking surprised.
I still somehow had the ball at my feet, but this roller coaster of a section had actually tired me out a bit. At the top, the rooftops of Carlisle were a welcome sight. In Carlisle, we got our first proper view of the River Eden. That is beautiful. Did we mention it was a scenic route? Our first encounter with a pair of goalposts. And after a brief leisure centre van stop, we were cheered on by our first fan.
This to me is like motorway. You want this?
Cheers, mate. You know what we're doing?
Yeah, I know what you're doing.
Oh, cheers, mate. Thank you. The lovely flat surfaces of Carlisle and its surrounding parks made a welcome change to all the flights of stairs that had peppered the day so far. The idea that they would continue throughout the day had been a worrying thought, but the tracks we were now being treated to were a dream.
This is a lovely little trail, isn't it? Nice. It's great when it's lined. Curtains of foliage.
We were soon reminded, however, that even the dreamiest of paths were the natural habitat of the bull's biggest apex predator.
No. Hello. Hello. Hey, buddy. See, dogs is... they will pop it. They will pop it. It's a real threat, isn't it? Yeah, man. Thank you. This ball's got across Britain, so it can't be popped. Right. Thank you, appreciate it very much.
Shortly after this, at the ridiculously tempting Van Stop 5, Verity joined the pack, the gorgeous paths continued, and it really started to feel like I was getting my teeth stuck into this adventure.
Stop fannying around. Keep it nice and simple. You're not Lionel Messi. Just pass the bloody ball. Man on, an empty stadium, yes. Man on. Come on. The cross goes sailing widely over the heads.
Just over 15 miles in, and spirits were still sky high.
What about a farmer? Do you think you can make it a farmer?
Oh, that would be the dream, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it?
To Meg's a farmer, I could get my revenge.
There was even a chance for the rambunctious Russ to release some of his forbidden bull frustration.
Meg's it. Might not end well for the chicken. Is that another football? Oh, there is, yeah, there's another football. Yeah, Russ, I think you're going to have to hoof this, mate. Not that one. Oh, mate, what is that? It's not a football.
There's a woman in the window.
There's a mark on that car.
There's a girl in the garden.
Is there? Should we get a gun?
He's hopping fences.
This is beautiful, this path.
Yeah.
Dribbler's dream.
This is what Tom goes to bed dreaming about.
It has been, genuinely.
The slope perfect on either side as well.
From all the walking over the years.
Nice.
You know, you can't go wrong.
As dreamy as this ancient pathway was, it was easy to get carried away.
That is a sight for sore eyes, that, isn't it?
Oh no.
I think the sea's actually there.
Look at that for a repugnant sight.
That is vile,
That is
actually, mate.
humbling.
There's a way, isn't
Humbling.
Despite this though, it was definitely starting to feel like we were leaving the flat floodplains behind and starting to climb into the spine of the country.
So you can definitely tell we're heading further inland here. Got the Pennines over there. And it's getting more and more hilly. We're kind of climbing for a while, as you can imagine. And the plan is 10 miles away, roughly. We've got a good van stop in a car park by Hadrian's Wall, where we should have a decent stop of about half an hour, maybe a bit less, where we get some good grub inside us. And that's where night will fall and we'll join the road. The road section will continue for about 18 miles through the night, and it'll be foul, won't it, Russ?
Yeah.
It'll be foul.
The night shift. This is when the real dogs come to shine. This is why I'm here.
It's when Russ's vocal cords really come out and stretch.
That's when we get the speaker out, we set a few vibes.
Yeah.
We all like hold each other's hands.
Get into a hole.
Yeah.
And then beyond
Maybe
that,
have a cuddle, do you know what I mean?
and then beyond that, well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it,
Yeah.
I think. No point really talking about that now, in case it doesn't happen.
Perhaps we were expecting this to be a walk in the park. These bastards from King's Priory are kicking lumps out the ball.
What are our thoughts, gents and ladies? I mean, for a start, the weather is perfect.
Spectacular.
Considering the heat that we've just had in the past 2 weeks.
I do need a poo.
There's a decent field over there.
For a poo?
Yeah.
We're poo connoisseurs, great.
The fecal chit-chat continued as we left the picturesque village of Newtown.
What are the odds of a ghostie? Does it feel like?
I feel like I need to let it brew more for a ghostie.
I think sometimes you can let it brew for too long, though.
Yeah, I think with poos though, it's always better to overcook it than undercook it.
But did make way for the first serious question of the day from Ben.
So, what made you want to do this in one, like 24-hour setting rather than just camp and do it in 2 or 3?
I think just because it's like just about doable, but almost impossible. It's got more of an appeal and a ring to it, doing it in a day.
Yeah.
So I thought if it is possible and I can train for it, why not give it a go? It's exciting, isn't it? Like the idea of you might not do it.
We might not yet.
To sum up what I was trying to say there, I was hungry for a real challenge. Something that I realised the benefits and importance of a few years back and have lived by ever since. Many of you will have already seen the video I posted a few weeks back where I talked about my experiences with depression and how pivotal physical challenges were in my road to recovery. I'll post the link to that video in the description if you think it might be of use to you. But for now, I just want to say this. 125 people commit suicide in the UK every week, 3/4 of those being men. Many of these people just don't believe or even realise that there's a way out. That's how a 20-year-old me felt all those years ago. Men's mental health charity Calm spreads stories such as my own, raise awareness in communities and bring young men together to reject living miserably and get the help they need. An £8 donation to Calm pays for one potentially life-saving hotline call. So if you can spare £1 or $1, don't think twice. If you can't do that, even liking this video, depending on how many of you do it, could save thousands of lives by drumming up more views and spreading more awareness. What are you waiting for? Click that button. In episode 2, I will talk about the other 2 charities that I feel passionately about. For now, though, let's get back to the task at hand. And the bull, recently dubbed Sonny, is already being goated.
What the fuck is going on? Checking out Sonny. Are you asking to be mexed? Excuse me. Oh, they're goats. Oh.
They are, you fucked it, mate.
Oh, he's coming back for more.
A tricky section reminded us that it wouldn't all be smooth sailing.
Watch out, Russ.
Nicely done.
But Sonny was soon free to express himself once again.
You know how it keeps saying it's a criminal offence to bother sheep? To worry sheep. Worry them up. Do you reckon by proxy it's illegal to mex a sheep? Yeah.
But there'd be no megsing these sheep.
Oh, they're rams. Have you seen the fucking bollocks on that? Jesus.
Oh!
Mate, you can't even run. Fuck me.
Around the corner from Space Hopper Meadow, we had our own ball-based inconvenience.
We're currently going backwards. How was that? I reckon it was about there.
Yeah. Basically it clipped cameraman Stan's foot and it propelled it forward. So back we took it.
This lovely downhill section, or at least the part of it that I didn't have to climb up,
I love these downhills, man.
took us nicely over the quarterway point.
What is that?
There's another ball under there.
Huh? Oh, there is another ball under there.
What?
What's that then?
That is your ball.
Wait.
No, yours is that is yours down there, Tom.
Oh, that must have just fallen out. Let's move.
We continued on with the correct ball,
Reconnected.
Woo!
but we soon found ourselves missing a path.
It's definitely the right way.
Look out for the next stile.
Yeah.
Run, man. Just scream at it, mate. Like,
Hey!
great, really loud, big and loud. Woo! Get out of it! Shot himself.
Is that the the gate we're after?
Must be.
Because at the moment we're not on a path, are we?
No.
Turns out the Hadrian's Wall route I'd uploaded to the GPS was slightly out of date and wrong, just as it had been earlier on, resulting in an inevitable barbed wire vault and a pointless detour from the road. This pattern of making good ground and then experiencing a setback had sort of become the norm, but as long as there were relatively minor setbacks, we would be okay. Even if it did mean getting cow shit on my head.
You got shit on your forehead now.
As it stood, we were on track to reach van spot 11 by well before our target of 10 p.m.
Take it home.
But just as we caught our first glimpse of Roman brickwork,
There it is.
my body started to show its first glimpse of an Achilles heel.
There's something I've done to my foot from side footing it. I don't know what's going on. There's like this searing pain. I don't know. Can't explain it. It's not from the actual impact.
Yeah.
It's just bending in a weird way.
And I wasn't the only one who was struggling physically. 21-year-old cameraman Stan from York, who had never ran further than 10k before, was not only keeping up with the rest of us, but had been carrying a 6-kilogram camera with him the whole time.
How you feeling?
Alright.
That thing's not light.
Forearms. Could be better. Everything else. Coping. Whoa.
If we stop for 5 minutes for every stop, that's 2.5 hours.
Adopting an improvised bunting technique that spared the side of my foot from the stress fracture that was brewing inside it, we took advantage of these peaceful, direct roads, minds now firmly on reaching the big van stop.
What's that marathon done?
One marathon down, guys.
Mate, put it there.
First marathon.
Let's fucking go, brother.
Yes.
First marathon for cameraman Stan here. And he has been holding the camera.
Which is fucking heavy.
And he's
Yeah.
Big part of the wall.
Oh,
Here it is.
Get a bit of one bounce.
whoa, mate.
However, as we passed the marathon mark, confusion and a hint of despair started to sweep through the ranks.
You two must be on like 26 miles now, eh?
I'm on
What are you on?
25.9.
I'm on
Yeah.
42.5 kilometres.
So I'm on 42.05 kilometres, so you're about 500 metres ahead of me.
You'd think that having done a marathon would have been a positive thing, but the thing was, we were pretty sure that the big 10 p.m. van stop was van stop 11, and we'd only just left van stop 8.
That would mean if it's in 2 stops time, if it is van stop 11, that would mean we'd be out by
About 3 or 4 miles, yeah.
If it's 11,
We could potentially be 4 miles out, which would mean
12 in total.
times that by 3 at least.
Yeah.
Either we'd got something fundamentally wrong, or we'd travelled 3 miles more than we should have done, presumably from all the zigzagging and all the U-turns. If that was the case, we'd instantly go from being ahead of schedule to well and truly behind. We'd also have a mountain to climb actually getting to van spot 11 before dark, not to mention an extra 10 miles added on to the whole trip. At the next rendezvous, we were seriously hoping that our calculations were wrong.
On your form, what is this stop? What number?
Stop 9.
This is 9.
mate, that is bad. Because 11 is the one,
The 10 p.m.
the 10 p.m. one.
How
Yeah,
far away is van stop 11 from here? Equidistant from the last.
fuck me.
That's 10, and then to
Fuck,
that to
man.
11. So equidistant from the next one, and then a further mile.
Fuck's sake.
So you could say things have got weird.
This is grim, man.
That's not a good sign, by the way.
I'm getting fucking confused. I am struggling right now.